They thought it was rude, some thought it was lazy, others thought it was sarcastic, even disrespectful, and a few never realized it was the exact moment Filipinos stopped trusting them. Because there is one Filipino gesture, small, silent, almost invisible, that foreigners misunderstand so badly. It has quietly cost people friendships, job opportunities, and social acceptance. Most foreigners think the mistake is harmless. It isn't. What makes it dangerous is this: Filipinos almost never tell you that you misunderstood it. They notice, they remember, and they adjust their opinion of you without a single confrontation. Let me show you how it happens. A foreigner arrives in the Philippines. First week, everything feels welcoming. People smile. People help. Strangers are warm in a way that feels almost surprising. Then one small interaction happens. A question is asked. A gesture is given. The foreigner reacts the wrong way, and from that moment on, something shifts quietly. No argument, no correction, just a subtle distance. Most foreigners leave the country never knowing why some doors never fully open for them. And it all traces back to one misunderstood gesture. Let me tell you a story. A foreign teacher had just arrived in Manila. First week, new job, new country. Everything felt exciting and overwhelming at the same time. One afternoon, he stopped a Filipino security guard outside a mall and asked a simple question. "Excuse me, where's the nearest ATM?" The guard didn't point with his finger. He didn't speak. He didn't even move his hands. He just pursed his lips slightly and nodded his head in a direction. The foreigner froze. Was that sarcasm? Was the guard annoyed? Was he being mocked back home? That expression would mean, "Figure it out yourself." So the foreigner replied a little sharply, "What?" The guard smiled, nodded again, and repeated the same gesture: lips, head, direction. The foreigner walked away irritated, convinced the guard hadn't taken him seriously. Only later, after wandering around lost, did another Filipino quietly explain what had happened. "That means over there. He was helping you." That moment stayed with the foreigner for years. Because what looks like a strange facial twitch to outsiders is actually one of the most deeply Filipino gestures there is. Filipinos point with their lips, sometimes clearly, sometimes barely at all, a soft pucker, a subtle tilt of the head. To Filipinos, it's natural, efficient, polite. To foreigners, it's confusing and sometimes offensive, because gestures are not universal. They are cultural languages. And the Filipino lip point isn't just about direction. It's about values. In many Western cultures, pointing with your finger is neutral, helpful, normal. But in the Philippines, direct finger pointing, especially at people, can feel aggressive or commanding. It implies hierarchy. You go there, you do this. Filipino culture, shaped by centuries of communal living and social harmony, learned to soften instructions. So instead of commanding with fingers, Filipinos gesture with their face. It's indirect, gentle, non-confrontational. It says, "I'm suggesting, not ordering." But here's where foreigners get it wrong. They assume clarity must be loud. They assume respect looks like directness. So when a Filipino answers softly or silently, they think they're being dismissed. Filipinos notice this reaction immediately: the confusion, the slight irritation, the shift in tone. But instead of correcting it, they often let it pass. Why? Because Filipino politeness isn't about being right. It's about avoiding embarrassment, especially yours. There's a Filipino concept called hiya. It's often translated as shame. But it's more subtle than that. Hiya is the discomfort of causing someone else to lose face. Correcting a foreigner too directly, especially in public, can cause hiya. So Filipinos smile and move on, which creates another misunderstanding. Foreigners think Filipinos are passive. They're not. They're considerate. Another story. A foreign tourist in Cebu was waiting for a jeepney. He asked a local woman, "Does this jeep go to IT Park?" She didn't answer verbally. She just pointed with her lips toward the sign on the jeep. The tourist laughed awkwardly. "Okay, but yes or no?" The woman smiled, nodded slightly, and repeated the gesture. The tourist walked away thinking, why won't anyone here just answer a simple question? What he didn't realize was that she already had. Yes. Now here's where the misunderstanding stops being harmless. A foreign manager once shared a story privately with Filipino coworkers years later. He said, "I never understood why my team was polite, but distant. Meetings went smoothly. Deadlines were met. No one complained. But no one volunteered ideas. No one pushed back. No one warned him when problems were coming." One day, during a stressful deadline, he reassigned a Filipino employee in front of everyone. He pointed directly at him with his finger, sharp, public, direct. The room went silent. The employee nodded and complied, but something broke. From that day on, the team stopped protecting him. Mistakes were no longer quietly fixed. Problems were no longer preemptively flagged. He only found out issues when they were already unmanageable. Years later, a Filipino colleague finally explained it to him. "You didn't just assign him," the colleague said. "You embarrassed him." The manager was shocked. "I didn't insult him," he replied. "I just pointed." The Filipino answered calmly. "That's the problem. You didn't know what that meant here." That's when the manager realized something unsettling. No one had ever confronted him. No one had ever complained. But the culture had already responded, quietly. This is why many foreigners say Filipinos are easy to work with. What they don't realize is how much emotional labor is happening underneath. That ease, Filipinos read rooms. They soften edges. They absorb tension. The lit point is just the visible tip of that mindset. It's used everywhere, in families, in crowded rooms, at gatherings. A Filipino mother doesn't shout across the house. She lit points. A Filipino friend doesn't interrupt loudly to signal it's time to leave. They lit point, then raise their eyebrows slightly. Foreigners often miss it. And when they do, Filipinos adjust around them. They speak louder. They explain more directly. They switch styles, not because their way is wrong, but because they're accommodating. And here's something most foreigners don't know. Filipinos notice when you start understanding the gesture, and it changes how they see you. A foreigner who begins lip pointing awkwardly at first is seen as someone who's trying, not mocking, not imitating, trying to understand, and that effort matters. There's a quiet story told among Filipino workplaces about a foreign boss who used to bark orders, pointing constantly. People obeyed, but they didn't trust him. Over time, he noticed Filipino managers didn't do that. They gestured softly. They used eye contact. They used pauses. So he adapted. One day, he caught himself lip pointing instinctively during a meeting. The room went quiet. Then someone smiled. Not because it was funny, but because it meant something. It meant he wasn't just working in the Philippines anymore. He was listening to it. Many Filipinos don't even realize how unique the gesture is until a foreigner points it out to them. It's just normal, like breathing. Which is why misunderstandings feel so strange on both sides. Foreigners think, "Why wouldn't you just say it?" Filipinos think, "Why wouldn't you notice?" Two worlds, one small movement, and one final thing. Foreigners often assume respect looks like confidence and directness, but in Filipino culture, respect often looks like restraint, not imposing, not embarrassing, not commanding. The lit point minimizes intrusion. It says, "I'll help you without putting myself above you." So next time you're in the Philippines, and someone answers your question without words, don't assume they don't care. Don't assume they're confused, and don't assume they're being rude. You're being welcomed into a different communication rhythm, one that asks you to slow down, to observe, to notice the small things, because in the Philippines, meaning is often whispered, not declared, and that tiny gesture barely a movement at all has been saying, "I am helping you this whole time." You just had to learn how to see it and think back about the last time someone helped you in a way you didn't recognize. You might still owe them a thank you.